people really don't even know what the word meditation means. If you look it up, meditation means fixating your mind and senses on something. I may be meditating on surfing. Other people may be meditating on pornography, food, money. Whatever your mind and senses are fixating on, you're meditating. It just doesn't mean it's spiritual, because it means fixating your mind and senses on something. An example is, you've heard this before. Imagine somebody, they committed a crime and they were arrested, and the judge says their act was premeditated.
Meditated.
It means they were meditating on murder or whatever the crime was before they did it. They were fixating their mind and senses on it. So you can even see in our own language that it's used not always in spiritual suggestive connotations or whatever. It's always put as whatever you're using your mind and senses on can be considered a meditation. So spiritual meditation or transcendental meditation, higher meditation, is when you're putting your mind and senses on God. It's like, how do I put my mind and senses on something that's going to elevate my heart, my mind? What's going to take me to that next step? So I always encourage people, like, benefits that you're going to get through meditation. It can start with feeling really happy, really content, very equipoised, balanced in your own life. But eventually it purifies you and you get clear as you do it. And the more you get purified, the more you want to do it. The more you want to do it, the more you're going to be having these breakthroughs. It's like my own dad. I'll try to keep it short, but I was about 17, 18 years old, somewhere around there. He was going to teach a meditation workshop in Northern California. And we hop in a car and we drive up the coast, and he says, let's stop the car. And he hops out, and we're like 30 minutes out of San Francisco. My dad is standing on the side of the road. He's rubbing his chest. Everyone hops out of the car. We're like, what's going on, Dad? He's like, just give me 1 second. I'm having a heart attack right now. And we're like, what? We all hop in the car, but my dad was just like that, just even keeled. 5 minutes pass by. He walks back in the car. He goes, all right, let's go to the hospital. And we're like, you sure you had a heart attack? He's like, yep. So we go to San Francisco General Hospital. My dad walks in, goes to the front desk and says, 30 minutes ago, I had a heart attack. I would like to check myself in. And they're like, you sure you had a heart attack? Because he was just chill. He goes, oh, yeah. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. They're like, okay. So they bring him in. They start running tests. He's hooked up to all this stuff. The doctor comes in and says, you didn't have a heart attack. You're fine. You're good to go. We're going to let you out soon. And then my dad looks at all of us kids and he's like, no, I had a heart attack. I'm going to have several more while I'm in this hospital, and I'm going to die in this hospital. He just knew it. He saw it before it happened. And all of us kids are like, oh, crying. We're all super emotional. We all love him. And the doctor's like, I don't know why he's saying this. He didn't have a heart attack. He's going to be fine, kids. I'm going to go get his papers. We're going to release him. And the doctor leaves. And my dad starts to quote the Bhagavad Gita to us. He says, the wise neither lament for the living nor for the dead. And we're like, the wise neither lament for the living nor for the dead. Because the wise understand that we're not our bodies. We're a soul that gives this body life. So if we're in a body, we're still alive. If the body is dead, the soul is still living on. So the wise understand there's no death of the soul. That's what he's telling us. He goes, I want you to see this, guys, with spiritual eyes. It's going to be really hard for you, but I want you to see it with spiritual eyes while I go through this. So we're all trying to get it together. And then while the doctor's away, he has another heart attack. All these things are going off in the hospital. All the nurses come in. They're like, oh my God, he really did have a heart attack before. And his heart attack passes. They rush him up to the ICU. And we're all standing next to him in the ICU unit. And they tell him he can't have any water or food in case he needs surgery. They're going to keep him there. Meanwhile, my dad tells the doctors, no matter what happens, I don't want any drugs. They're like, not even for the pain? He goes, nothing. I want to be completely cognizant as I go through this process. And they're like, sir, you're not going to die. You're in a hospital. You're in the safest place it's going to be right now. And he just had this look like, oh no, it's going down. And so we're sitting there and he's thirsty. So we ask if we can give him some water. They say, no, you can give him ice chips. So we're standing on the left of him, giving him ice chips, and he's eating these ice chips. And this nurse comes in and she shoves this huge syringe in his right arm. And then my dad just starts laughing super hard. And the nurse goes, what's the matter? And he says, nothing. He's like, it's just kind of comical that this is the duality of the material world. On the left, I'm fed delicious ice chips. It's like pleasure. And on the right, I'm stabbed with a needle. It's pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain. That's the world here. And she's like, all right, whatever, dude. She leaves. Later that night, he has a massive heart attack, and it creates an aortic dissection, which his heart splits in half. Everyone dies instantly when this happens. The doctor's waiting for him to die. 5 minutes go by, 10, 15, 20, half an hour goes by, and he's not dead. Both halves of his heart are beating. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. He's having trouble breathing, so they intubate him. They put this huge tube down his throat, and they tie his arms down. And they're like, oh, let's see how cognizant. And they ask him so many questions, and he answers by squeezing. 2 squeezes for this, 3 squeezes for that. He's fully cognizant. They're like, well, he fully understands everything. And we keep asking, can you untie his hands? And they're like, no, we can't untie his hands because it's so painful having that in, not to mention he's on no pain meds. So it's like someone took a knife and cut his heart in half, and people would just die from the pain, but for some reason he's still alive.
Wow.
And they're like, well, we'll untie him, but if he pulls the tube out, just know we have to put the tube back in. And we're like, untie him. So they untie him, and my dad doesn't pull it out. He just shakes his hands off, gives us a thumbs up. Then he starts to snap his hands, his right hand, because the other hand he can't really move anymore. He's snapping his right hand. And we're like, what does he want? We can't figure it out for 2 hours. What does he want? Finally, my mom goes, I know. And she runs out of the room and comes back with some mala beads. She hands him beads, and he gives her a smile and raises his hand in the air, and he starts to meditate on his beads one by one. My dad understood that if he was going to go out, he's going to go out like Gandhi did, deep in mantra meditation. So when I say in the beginning stages of meditation, you may feel good, balanced, equipoised, but then it starts to take a hold of your life, and you start to have a deeper perspective of what your meaning is, what you should do, how you should operate, and most importantly, how you should die. That's the thing no one talks about. It's like if I told someone they have a math test on Monday, they're going to study the shit out of math before that test because they know it's going to happen. But death is 100% guaranteed for all of us, but nobody prepares for it. It's like, I'm telling you, there's this huge test waiting for you, and then nobody tries to do anything for it. They're like, I'll wing it. We'll see, hope for the best, play it loose, right? So my dad's like, all right, I'm going to meditate. And so he meditated on his beads. He did this almost 24 hours a day for 18 more days in the hospital with his heart split in half.
Wow.
And we'd all take shifts with him. I would sit there at night meditating on my beads next to him. And we'd be chanting and chanting. And then a couple days before he passed away, the doctors walk in and they go, we want to ask you some questions. My dad's there. They puts his beads down. They hold his hand. They go, we're going to attempt a surgery that has never been done before. This actually hasn't been done. We want to do this to you, but we can't unless you give us permission. Here's the deal. If we do this surgery, there's a 97% chance you're going to die on the operating table. And we have to heavily sedate you. We know you don't want to be sedated, but this is the only way. There's a 3% chance you'll live. If you want the surgery, squeeze my hand 3 times. And he wouldn't even squeeze. They asked him over and over again. Then they say, okay, we want to ask you another question. You do understand that if you don't get the surgery, there's a 100% chance you're going to die, but you can die drug-free. Squeeze my hand 3 times. And he'd squeeze every time 3 times. So he knew what he was doing. He
What
knew
a
where he was
warrior.
going. Yeah. And they're like, all right. Then on the 18th day, he starts to flatline. He's holding his beads. He's got a huge electric smile on his face. They're pumping his heart. The nurse is like, why the hell is this guy smiling? And he leaves blissed out of his mind. And people go, isn't it painful talking about the story? It is and it isn't. I mean, I love my dad. It was very painful at the time, but I love my dad more than anyone could love somebody. And parents should teach you how to live, right? But I also think the most important thing anyone could ever show you on the face of the earth is how to properly die. And I feel like he showed me how to die.
Wow.
So, when it comes to meditation and chanting, it's so much more than getting equipoised, stopping your thoughts, feeling content, feeling happy. It's becomes a true way of living and a way of thinking. It changes the dialogue in your mind of what's important, what's not important.